Once again, in today's Gospel reading, we have an account of our Lord encountering Mary Magdalene, or we could say Mary Magdalene encountering our Lord. And he appears to her first because she's the one who is so desperately seeking for our Lord, even if it's just his dead body. She wants to be close to him. So great is her love that she cannot be consoled. Even if she were able to be close to our Lord's dead body, she would be satisfied. And this is why she remains standing outside the tomb and is inconsolable. And of course, as we see, our Lord appears to her, she initially thinks that he is just the gardener. And it's interesting, even when the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, if you remember, our Lord didn't reveal himself until they sat down and he broke the bread, and they recognized him in the breaking of the bread. And we might ask the question, why did our Lord hide his identity in this way? In other words, why didn't he reveal himself initially? It's obvious that he's hiding his identity. And I think it's a message not just for the individuals that he was dealing with at that time, but a message for all of us, that our Lord is present when we don't realize it, when we don't recognize him. And it's especially when people are down or suffering, sometimes they think that God is so far away. They think that God doesn't love them. But the reality is that God is there. We just don't recognize his presence. We just don't acknowledge that he is truly present. If we did so, we would be able to pray with greater faith, with greater confidence, and we would receive way more graces than we do at present. So it's a reminder to us to have great faith. And I suppose, since we're considering this, we can ask the question, why doesn't God reveal himself to all mankind? In other words, there are some people who don't believe in God, and they say, well, if God exists, why doesn't he just reveal himself? The answer is that God has revealed himself. He has revealed himself in many different ways, by the things that he has done, by the miracles, for example, by means of the existence of the Shroud of Turin, by means of the faith of others, by means of the faith of great saints, people like Mother Teresa of Calcutta and Padre Pio and St. Francis of Assisi, and so on and so on. God has revealed himself by the many miracles that he performs. And the reality is that for such people, even if God were to write in the sky, I am God and I exist, they still wouldn't believe in God. They would say, oh, well, someone just wrote that in the sky. Someone is just doing that. So God does exist, and he has revealed himself. And it's interesting that even top-notch scientists are acknowledging that God must exist. In other words, they're proposing intelligent design theory, that when we look at the universe and everything in it, the complexity, the harmony of it all, it just could not have come about by chance. I recall seeing a video of someone who was trying to evangelize people, and he gave them a magazine with many pictures in it. So he would give this magazine to individuals, and he would say, if you look at this magazine, the pictures in it, the paragraphs, the sentences, the word structure, and all these things, would you be able to believe that this just came about by chance, that this magazine, these pictures with the graphics, the pixels, and all these technical things, that it just came about by chance? And of course the answer is no. And he goes on to point out that when we consider the genetic makeup of a single cell, the genetic makeup that is able to make our bodies and everything in it, the liver, the kidneys, the heart, the lungs, all these different things, all which was initially contained in a tiny cell, and the genetic information in there, he points out that the genetic information in one single cell is far more complex than that magazine that he gave to them, and contains intelligent information. In other words, it's not just random information. So various authors have said that the amount of information that is contained in our genetic material is equivalent to or greater than thousands of encyclopedia textbooks. And that's hard to fathom. So these things haven't come about by chance. So many scientists who are non-believers, they don't like the fact that all the scientific evidence points to the fact that the universe began out of nothing. How could nothing come about from nothing? What started off? So for anything that has a beginning, there has to be a cause for it. And the only cause that we can postulate is God. So these atheist scientists, they acknowledge the universe came about out of nothing, but they have a hard time understanding how that happened. And so they say, well, nothing caused nothing, which is impossible. So something had to cause something, and that something is God. So the point is, there's so much evidence for the existence of God that we don't really have an excuse. There's a very good book. Recently I gave a talk, some of you may remember, and my talk was based largely on this book. The title of the book is Why I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. So to be an atheist means you have to believe, you have a system of belief, but there's no evidence for atheism. Whereas for us, there's tons and tons of evidence. The only problem is that people are hesitant to believe. They could still put the question to us, well, even then, why wouldn't God just reveal himself to us? Why doesn't God make it such that we can always recognize him, always see him? And the reason for that is because if God enabled us to see him as he truly is, then we would automatically love him. We would automatically believe in him. But God doesn't want us to love him automatically. In other words, God doesn't want us he doesn't want to force us to love him. He doesn't want to compel us to love him. He wants us to choose to love him. And so we must choose to have faith in him, and we must choose to love him. And we must remind ourselves that he is present to us, whether we see him or not, whether we recognize his presence or not. And I think the other thing that Jesus wants to convey to us is that, as he said, when you have done it to the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. In other words, we need to see the presence of Christ in those who are suffering, and to recognize that God is there, and that when we do good things to the people around us, God blesses us. He gives us all kinds of blessings and graces. And so it's important that we try to love everyone around us. During this time of the pandemic, we cannot interact with people as much as we do at other times, but we can still pray for others. And we certainly pray for all those who have been stricken by the coronavirus, for the first responders, for all these people. But we should also pray for those people who lack faith, who do not believe, because in many ways they are far worse off spiritually than people who have been struck with the coronavirus who have faith.